Welcome to MSP Unplugged, episode number 41, Mental Health. I'm your host, Jeff Halash. This is our live show where we discuss different ways to run your IT business, whether it's managed services, consulting, break fix, or anything in between. I want to give a quick call to action, and that is, we're back, baby. We are back. We're officially back on the road for TechCon Unplugged 2021. We're returning September 17th through the 19th, 2021 to the Aloft Hotel in Rosemont, Illinois. Easy to get to, airport, driving, all that kind of good stuff. What do you expect this year? Well, you can learn from amazing panels to help maintain and improve your business. There'll be more vendors to introduce new services you can offer along with saving your time and your money. You can also rub elbows, which everybody loves doing this, once again with similar peers in our community to listen to real life experiences. Get your tickets now before they sell out for only $199. All right, let me introduce our co-host today. We have Corey Fruitman from Instant Housecall. Corey, how are you doing? Oh.
No, thank you. Not bad, thank you. How about you?
I'm doing excellent. I am doing excellent. It's been a interesting, well, you're in Canada, right? So it's probably a fair bit cold up there, I would imagine, at this point.
It's chilly, yeah.
Yes, yeah, it's chilly here too. So I'm feeling the hibernation setting in. Oh, all right. So let's go ahead. We're going to go ahead and dive into this subject of mental health. And I think one of the things that a lot of people don't realize is being an entrepreneur is hard from many aspects. And the reason they don't realize that, I think a lot of times, is entrepreneurs kind of think a little bit differently. They're kind of the mindset to go out, they're going to kill it, bring it home, and do whatever they got to do to succeed in their business. I think that's the initial mindset. And then you have things like real life that hit you sideways, upside down, and from every direction. So I think a lot of times people don't realize that life is still going to happen no matter what you choose to do. So when you go out and choose to be an entrepreneur, I think sometimes we think of these things and we think of, I've got to be the person that's in charge and I can't show weakness. And the problem with that is, I think if you're broken to a certain extent, or you have issues and you have staff or whoever, or customers, they know it. It's not like you're hiding a lot of this stuff. It comes out in different ways. And some of those ways are not so good to your business. And I think that's some of the things that you talked about in a couple of your blog posts that I read recently. So let's go ahead and talk about the issue of mental health, depression, anxiety, all these different things that come up that are real. And they're not just something you can just sweep under the rug and, throw off to the side and go, I'm just going to power through it. I'm just going to get through it, because I don't believe it works that way. And I think you're going to explain some of those things today.
Yeah, I think that's something that that a lot of people have a misconception about. They hear words like depression and anxiety that you touched on, and they're words that have sort of made their way into popular culture. We talk about depression, we think we think that it's about feeling blue. We've all gone through a breakup and we've felt crappy, or we've all suffered the loss of a loved one and we felt badly about it. And we think that that's what depression means. And it's not. Depression it's a mental illness, and just to sort of get my personal story out of the way on this. I got smacked, right between the eyes with depression. And it came out of nowhere. My business was going well. I had a fantastic marriage. My family's close, and just out of absolutely nowhere, just hit me right between the eyes. And I didn't know it was depression. I had no idea what was going on. It just sort of hit me. And so, but back to the original point, people have this misconception that it's about feeling blue, and it's really not. it's a mental illness, and just like, you know, any other illness that you can get, like cancer or breaking a leg or I don't know, anything else, any other illness that you can get, it's very real, and you need to see a doctor for it, and you need to get better. So I don't know, does that answer the question, or did I just take it off in a completely different tangent?
No, that's exactly, that's exactly what we're talking about here is some of these things that I think there's these things out there that people think in a certain way because of society. And like I said in the beginning, is because a lot of times as the leader in your organization, you've got to act like you know everything. And when you get hit with something that's out of your control, and I don't think I've ever told this on a podcast before. I've told different things about myself, and I share a little bit here and there, but over the last year and a half, I've had, in 2 separate occasions, I've had panic attacks. I had no idea what in the world. I'm like going, I knew it was a panic attack, and there was absolutely zero I could do. I mean, physically, I could do nothing about it. It was just this feeling. One time I woke up in the middle of the night when I was out of town. I had to call my wife, and, she kind of talked to me a little bit, and because she's gone through some of those types of things. And I was like, and then it wasn't too long ago, a couple of months ago, I just woke up in the middle of the night, man. I was like, oh, and I just had this like heavy weight on my chest, and for absolutely no reason.
Did you even know what it was about?
No. So I think a lot of times too, there are things that we do to ourselves. And I think I laugh because we're all in technology, right? And technology was supposed to make everything easier. And that is a bold-faced, absolute 100% lie. It does not make anything easier. It makes everything 100 times more complicated. And so when you look at the things that we do, we're attached to our devices. We're attached to our computers, our phones, our whatever. And a lot of times, one of the things I've had to do, because I know I get anxious when my ringer on my phone goes off for anything other than a phone call. Well, even sometimes for phone calls. And so what I did was I turned every notification off on my phone. I got rid of most of the social media accounts. And so all of those things I can go into and manually log in. And then I only usually do it from the desktop when I want to, because we're trained. It's like Pavlov's dog, right? You get that bell and you're like, oh, I got to look at it. I got to look at it. And I'm in the middle of doing something, could be with my wife or kids or whatever. And all of a sudden this thing goes off and I have this need to look. In 99.9%, it's unimportant. Anybody that wanted to get through to me, here's the thing. If something was really going on wrong with you, you would have to call me on the telephone, dial the number and get a hold of me, because then I'm going to answer the phone. Because you know why? That rarely ever happens. But I have every other thing that goes off and lets me know, hey, you need to look at this. Hey, you need to look at this. Hey, you need to look at this. Or a customer wants this. And it's like, and we feel like we have to deal with everything today, right now, at this second. And I don't believe that's a truth, because I think a lot of people out there, they get inundated with let's put out the fire. Let's put out the fire. And I think that can cause a lot of, anxious feelings, irritability, those types of things that will affect you. And then, man, when something like depression hits you and you don't know what it is, or maybe you do, or, I'm sure there's a lot of different scenarios that people go through when they're dealing with things like depression and trying to figure out, hey, what's wrong with me? What do I need to do? It's got to be confusing.
It is. And I mean, I remember like when I first, I remember my first appointment with a psychiatrist. I went in and I remember distinctly saying to him, I know something's wrong. I can tell there's something wrong, but I don't know what it is. And I'm like, look at me. I'm laughing. I'm smiling. I'm cracking jokes. And I was laughing the whole time. I was smiling. I was cracking jokes. I'm like, I don't think I'm depressed. Does this seem depressed to you? Look at me. I'm like, literally, I'm cracking up through the whole thing. And then at the end of it, he's like, okay, well, you're depressed. I'm like, okay.
Thanks, Doc.
Yeah, thanks very much.
Well, at the time, I mean, so when somebody brings out that diagnosis, you know, how does that, I hate to say it, how did that make you feel? But the reality is, when you get hit with that, what goes through your mind, and man, what's going on?
I mean, that's a good question. I mean, I guess, I guess what it was at the time, I mean, to be perfectly honest, I wasn't thinking straight. So and I knew I wasn't thinking straight. So, I definitely knew something was wrong. I just didn't know what it was. And he's like, "You're depressed." I'm like, "This doesn't feel like depression. Like, it just doesn't." But I'm like, I guess it is. Like, and then obviously, as I went to more appointments, he started explaining to me what it was. He started explaining to me that this is how men experience depression. Like, the way we understand depression in general is really how women express depression. So we understand it as crying, as feeling low, as down in the dumps. In general, and not always, but in general, that experience of depression is how women generally experience depression. Not always. There are obviously men who are going to cry and feel sad and down in the dumps. But when men experience depression, they generally feel like I did, which was like irritable and on edge and, pissy, for lack of a better word.
Right.
So, but I didn't identify that with depression, because who does, right? And like my regular doctor didn't either, because a lot of doctors miss it too. And so I think there's this huge gap of awareness, not just among regular people, but among the medical community, among everybody, about what depression really is, and particularly how it affects men. And then for the people who are watching, you can see this magnificent mustache that I'm growing here. And I just want to do a quick little plug that the reason I'm growing this mustache is for Movember. I don't know, is Movember a big thing in the US? Is it kind of a known thing?
I think it used to be, but I think I don't know. It's hard to say. I don't really pay attention to the whole.
Okay, fair enough.
The whole, themes and all that kind of stuff that go on. So
fair enough. So Movember, just so you know, is a charity. You can learn more about it at Movember.com. It's a charity that raises funds for prostate cancer, testicular cancer, and men's mental health. And to raise awareness, men grow a mustache you shave down on Movember 1st, and you grow a mustache and raise funds for the month of November. So I'm growing my mustache for exactly that purpose. So that's why I've grown this horrible thing, which my wife hates.
Wait, now you had a beard before, though, right? So
I did.
Okay.
I did.
Now, did she hate the beard?
Well, what happened? So before this, I actually grew the beard like big and homeless. So she hated that. Okay. And she now hates this. And I promised her I'll grow back a regular beard after this. So
gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, I owe her a regular beard.
Now, my wife, she prefers no facial hair whatsoever. If I get a little bit of facial hair, it's which is on a daily basis. It's a scratchy. Don't touch me. So I mean, and we'll have all the links for those in the show notes too, so people can check that out and contribute to the charity and all that. Now, there's a lot of things that I think. I guess I want to get the message out there of what do men, or I mean, people in general, what do they need to look for? What are some of the signs that they need to think about if I don't even want to say, because I'm going to say there's a lot of people out there that they might feel something's off, but they're not sure what. And it could be anything, right? Bad digestion, whatever. And so a lot of times I think the things will get discounted, and especially at the doctor. I go to the doctor nowadays, and I'm usually diagnosing myself. Hey, doc, I got this problem. Well, I look up these exercises on the internet for it. Well, I could have done that at home and saved myself a visit. And so it's kind of like I get a physical every year just because it's the right thing to do. And I get my blood drawn and make sure there's no inconsistencies or anything that might rear its head, at a moment's notice that I might not have been aware of. So I try to do that. But I think a lot of times they don't really know what's going on. You give them symptoms, and these symptoms can literally be for thousands of things. And that's the problem. So what do people look for in depression? And when's the time where they go, hey, maybe I need to go talk to somebody?
I mean, it's very hard because I mean, my depression and your depression and someone else's depression are going to be completely different.
Right.
And I am not a trained psychiatrist. So I quite frankly, I don't exactly know. I mean, there's obviously criteria, and if you want to look them up, they're in the DSM, the Diagnostic and Statistic Manual, but like they don't, they're intended to be used by trained psychiatrists, and I'm not a trained psychiatrist. And so if I had looked them up when I was in my deepest, darkest depression, I would have discounted them, and I wouldn't have looked it up properly. I wouldn't have been able to diagnose myself. So, like what I would say is things like sleeping too much or too little. That's probably a good example. Not being able to get out of bed, eating too much or too little. Like doing weird things. So an example of something I should preface this with, I was very depressed. So, the example that I'm about to give you is, you're definitely not going to have the exact same experience, but doing weird things. So, I remember one time I was making a peanut butter and jam sandwich, and I looked for the jam in the door of the fridge. I knew there was jam in the fridge, but I looked for the jam in the door of the fridge. It wasn't in the door of the fridge, and so I just didn't feel like looking in the rest of the fridge. I just left the half-made sandwich in the fridge, walked out the door of my house, went to Subway, picked up a sub, and ate the sub because I didn't feel like looking for the jam in the fridge. Just like stupid stuff like that. Like I don't know why I did that. I have no idea, but just weird behaviors like that. Having trouble starting tasks, having trouble switching between tasks, like friction or flipping between browser tabs, like doing nothing, or just things like that. Those are all signs of depression. But everybody's is going to be different.
Right. I think from the standpoint, if you're a person on the outside and you were to notice some things in somebody, is there anything that you could say to them? Because I feel like if there's most people are not just going to go, hey, let me just go check. Let me just go. It's just not going to happen. They're going to have some sort of push in the right direction, or a acknowledgement of that something's just not right and they need to get it looked at. So what are some of the things, if you're a person and you're looking at somebody on the outside, what could you do to encourage them to, hey, you might want to go talk to somebody?
I mean, it's a good question. I think you would just have to be upfront with them and say, look, I'm concerned. I think I'm concerned about your mental health. I think you need to see a psychiatrist. Let's set up an appointment for you. I don't know if there are any magic words, to be honest, right. But I think you have to encourage that person to do it. It's in the end, it's always going to be up to that person. And obviously, they're not in the right state of mind. If things go too far, obviously, it can happen. People can become, it didn't happen to me, fortunately, but people can become so depressed that they become forcibly committed to mental hospitals. It can happen. So, that can definitely happen. So you obviously want to nip it in the bud before that happens.
That's good. Yeah, I think a lot of times we don't want to be upfront with somebody and let them know that, hey, something's a little bit off and I'm really concerned for you. Now, so when this happened to you, did you basically go, okay, I'm going to go see somebody because I know something's wrong? Or were you encouraged by others, by loved ones to go seek some help?
I knew something was wrong. This is actually a weird one. I knew something was wrong, and but I was like, I need to finish something before I go seek help. And I sort of had a stake in the ground before, because I was like, I just need to finish this. I just need to finish this. And for whatever reason, I wanted to finish a project before I sought help. And then I was encouraged by someone, and then I went. So it was a kind of a combination of the two.
Okay. Gotcha. All right.
Yeah.
Oh, so, I mean, yeah, there's a lot of things that I think is, we talked about this in the beginning a little bit, but when it comes to being an entrepreneur or being the person that's in charge, being the person that's responsible for everything that goes on in your business and in your life, I think a lot of times people will look at that and I don't know that. I think they get to the point where they're like I said in the beginning, they have to be in charge. They have to, they have to show no weakness, and that's not healthy. That's not a healthy place to be, even in a non-depressed state, because if you try to be everything to everyone, you're going to be nothing to no one. And so I think a lot of times, and the other thing too is when you're the only one at the top, that becomes a very lonely place.
It does. It's a very difficult place to be in. And that blog post that you mentioned at the outset, I hope I'm getting my stats right. I think I am. 7% of the general population experiences depression at some point in their lives. 30% of entrepreneurs do. And actually, after sending out that blog post, I don't remember the numbers, but I had quite a few people reach out to me from the community saying, yep, I've had it too. And several people said, I've had anxiety, I've had PTSD, I've had all kinds of things. So it's definitely not uncommon within our community. I've had quite a few people reach out either on social media or by email privately, just saying, been there, done that. And it's common. It's common. It's very common. So, it's just something to watch for.
And I think we've even got some people in the chat room right now who are talking about some of the things that, they've gone through. And I think it is way more common. And what I've seen, this is just in my own travels, I've seen I don't know what it is. It seems something, and this is not always the case because there's people in their 20s and 30s that get hit with deep depression and anxiety and all that kind of stuff. But I've also seen, it seems like there's a lot more past the age of 40.
Mm-hmm.
And
we have cutesy names for it too, right? We call it a midlife crisis, or we call it burnout, or whatever. It's depression or writer's block or whatever. It's all depression, right? It's just, we just don't call it by its name. It's depression.
Well, and I think because a lot of people don't know, again, it's like being diagnosed at a doctor. The doctors don't, there's a reason they call it, and doctors don't get mad at me, but there's a reason they call it a practice, because they're practicing on you. So it's not any fault of their own, but I think you brought up a great point, is it's not going to be the same for everyone. It's different. And I think you have to do some different things in order to, I don't think it just comes down to talking to a professional. I think there's things that you probably have to do. So what are some of the steps that you have had to take in order to help yourself in your depression and other things that you were going through?
So, I mean, for me, it's been primarily medication. I mean, of course, me being me, I have a reasonably unusual form of depression. Just as it turns out.
You're special like that. Okay,
I'm special like that. I'm special. So, for example, like I said, like I present unusually. So like I smile and I'm happy and I really come off quite jovial throughout, like that. It's quite unusual to present the way I present. That's why I said, like if I gave you a list of my symptoms, they wouldn't make sense for a lot of people. And like a good example of that is when I first got it, I went onto Reddit and I read through the depression subreddit. I'm like, I have nothing in common with these people. Who the hell are these people? Like, I don't know who you people are. So I'm like, do I really have depression? Like, this is nuts. But anyway, so for me, it's been mostly medication. But for other people, and I want to emphasize that, because I know a lot of people complain about this. When you see a psychiatrist, they give you options. They don't just shove pills down your face. So when I first went, they said, do you want to do medication or do you want to do cognitive behavioral therapy? And so they do give you the option. And so I did do medication, but you can do cognitive behavioral therapy, which is talk therapy. I've got to say, like, the medication, I know different people have different attitudes towards it. It makes a huge difference. Like it's like night and day. It doesn't change your personality like people say it does. There's side effects to it. There's no question about it. But it doesn't like make you into a different person. Your personality stays intact. It doesn't turn you into a zombie. Like, I've read all these things, on forums and stuff, and I don't know where these people are getting this stuff from. But it works. The other thing is, it doesn't make you happy, right? Like, people have this idea that you're taking antidepressants, it's going to make you happy. It just makes you not depressed. It doesn't make you happy.
Gotcha.
So, yeah.
So is there anything that you have, now that you're on medication and going that route, is there anything that you do to change some of the maybe daily habits and things that you've done in the past, or is there any adjustment there, or are you just kind of doing the same things, just in a better state?
So there are habits that I try to change. It's difficult because depression affects a whole lot of other stuff, right? I've gained some weight. Like I said, my sleep is still a little bit off. There's still definitely some impact there. I try to keep myself to a stricter schedule. I'm at a loss for words for it right now, but I try to schedule my life a little bit more. I try to have a more structured life now. I try to walk my son to school every day. I try to pick him up every day. I try to make lunch every day. I try to, I try to have a family walk every day. I try to do certain things every day. You know what I mean? Like, I try to have, just sort of a healthier, balanced life type of thing. And I try to, just make sure that I do certain things every day. That helps. Because it's very easy, especially when you're depressed, to just sort of sit around and read Reddit all day.
Right. I think I have those symptoms. I'm not really sure. That doesn't sound like me. Well, one of my, a couple of my kids went through a couple things where, when they were younger, kind of when puberty hit, they went through these pretty depressive states. And I know, my wife was just talking about my one son, and she encouraged him at the time, because he was these awful, just dark dreams, and just, I couldn't sleep and wasn't eating. And it was horrible. And so she encouraged him to play video games, because he didn't want to do anything. Mm-hmm. He just wanted to lay around and do nothing. And he started getting into these video games, and he started becoming pretty good at it. And it helped to kind of redirect his thought process and in what was going on. So it kind of took up that brain space, for lack of better terms, in order to move him in a different direction. Now, that's not going to be the same for everybody, because I think in your blog post, one of the things you said was, a lot of times people will go for a walk, and it depends on the depressive state you're in, because if it's a light depression, I'm sure that that can absolutely, it's good for everybody, regardless of depressed or not. Taking a walk, relaxing, all that kind of stuff. But I think from a standpoint of people are looking for, if you're in that deep depression, like you said, you need to seek that help and go find somebody to kind of guide you in a direction that's going to help you, because I believe it's going to be different for everyone. I don't think I think there's certain things that there's maybe some commonalities, but it's no different than eating, working out. There's things that you can do, but to a certain extent, your body reacts differently to different things, different stimuli. It's just, as human beings, that's the way we're made up. So sometimes you need to figure out what those things are. And I like the and as part of turning off the notifications, you were talking about structure. A lot of things I've done is in my calendar, I've basically structured different things that I need to get done, and to make sure that they get done. But I don't overwhelm myself with trying to get everything done in that list. Like, there's a list that's buried somewhere in a digital form way off to the side that, when I get time and I want to put my time and effort into doing that, whatever it might be, painting a wall or whatever, then I will eventually get to that stuff. But in order to live on a regular daily basis, there's a certain amount of things that I need to do in order to keep my sanity, for lack of better terms, and in order to keep moving forward and getting things done and not getting overwhelmed. Because I think a lot of times too, this is why I'm not real big on to-do lists. Everybody has these humongous to-do lists, and it's like, it's this thing poking you right in between the eyeballs each and every day. And you want to talk about anxiety, man, that will bring up some anxious feelings in pretty much anybody.
Mm-hmm. For sure. And actually, you reminded me of a couple more symptoms that I didn't bring up before, but one of them is not enjoying things that you usually enjoy. So one of them and it's like a very subtle form of hell that you don't even realize, because you when you normally enjoy, like, you just don't enjoy anything, and it's really, really uncomfortable. So I again, my doctor asked me to. He's like, what do you enjoy doing? I'm like, I know I enjoy rollerblading. So he's like, okay, go for a rollerblade. And I tried to go around the block, and I'm like, I came back, and I for my next appointment, I said, I tried to go, but I'm old and out of shape. And he's like, uh-huh. Because that's genuinely how it felt. But I couldn't even make it around the block. And I'm like, I used to compete. Like, I know I can rollerblade, right? Like, but I just thought that I was old and out of shape. And then the other one is you just eat food because you need caloric intake. Like, you just put food in your face because you just need it to survive. So those are two more. So the not enjoying things that you need that you used to enjoy is called anhedonia, and I don't know what the food one's called, but anyway, yeah.
Yeah, those are two good things to definitely look out for. So, I mean, obviously, all the things you said in your blog post too, that you were able to, obviously your business was basically set up to where it could run almost on autopilot.
Mm-hmm.
And you were kind of, you were still in the business, but you could basically take time off to take care of yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And was that a nice feeling to have, to be able, to not be so, because I think a lot of times people go, well, if I go out, what's going to happen to my business, and what do they do in order to get their business to run basically, or just run on its own?
Yeah. I mean, to be honest, it didn't feel like a nice thing, just because of the state that I was in. It should have felt like a nice thing. It should have, but it didn't. And the entire time, it just felt like my business was actually crashing around me, but it wasn't.
Really? Okay.
It did. Just negative thoughts, just sort of.
Sure.
That's just how it feels.
Right.
Unfortunately, it didn't, and I mean, fortunately, my developers were able to continue developing, and everything was able to sustain itself. So I was very fortunate. Yeah, it didn't feel that way, but I was very fortunate.
Well, I think sometimes that, that comes to when we talked about being a leader and being in charge. You really have to find somebody that can fill in the gaps on your business. And in order to, because if something happens, even if it's not depression or something like that, I mean, heck, you break your leg, you break your back, you get in a car accident, you're, laid up for months at a time, whatever. You have to have something in place that's going to be able to move you through that. Because again, when you're in your 20s and 30s, you're invincible and nothing can touch you. Once you get past 40, I've always said this. I spent the first 40 years of my life doing stupid things, almost getting killed. And I'm going to spend the rest of my life, 40 or more years, trying to take the best care of myself that I possibly can so that I can make it through another day. Oh, but yeah. So I think a lot of times when it comes to being an entrepreneur, I mean, did you feel even before this happened, did you ever feel like it was lonely in your business?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. I think every entrepreneur feels that loneliness. I think there's, I mean, there are pressures to being self-employed that don't exist when you work for someone else. It's everything from that you don't even think about, right? Like who's going to clean the toilet and refill the toner, right? Like it's like stuff that just people take care of for you while you're working for someone else. All of a sudden you have to take care of. And even if you're not personally taking care of, which I do, but even if you're not personally taking care of it, you have to get someone else to do it and monitor them doing it, right? Like it's still on your shoulders in some way, shape, or form. So it's like it's a lot. And that structure that they provide, and this is something that I actually didn't really realize or appreciate until I had this run-in with depression, was the structure that an employer provides and the structure that you have to provide yourself are the structure that the employer provides is invaluable. Like the fact that they provide that structure for you to go into is a perk that you don't appreciate until you have to provide it for yourself. And you are, and it takes intellectual work that you don't realize that you're providing until you're in a position where you realize that you have to make that intellectual effort, and it really does draw a lot more on you than you realize.
And I think with that being said, I think that people, and that's why I've always said people need to think about their businesses differently, because I'm going to say this, and I'm on the outside looking in. There's a lot of successful businesses out there with people dying at the top. That's just the way it is. And most of that, if not all, is caused by themselves. And we're talking now that's outside of depression and all that kind of stuff. It just is as far as trying to take care of your business, making a structure, they let everything in their business control who they are, what they do, and how they do it, which I think if you want to be an entrepreneur is the wrong way to think about it. I think you need to think about it in a sense of, no, I'm going to structure myself. And you know what? Time with the kids is non-negotiable.
Right.
Time with the wife is non-negotiable.
Right.
It doesn't matter. I don't care if a client's building is burning down. It doesn't matter. It's non-negotiable. And I think nobody really thinks about it that way because, again, they're all trying to go out there and to be honest with you, I think most of your clients would actually appreciate not only you being in a good mental space, but they would appreciate the time and effort that you put into taking care of your family, because that's going to show exactly how you're taking care of your client in a lot of cases.
I agree with you, but it's easy to say when you're not in debt up to your eyeballs.
Well, and that's a whole nother discussion we could get into
for you.
Because again, we tell people all the time, I'm going to be perfectly honest with you. I said from the beginning, like when the COVID stuff hit and all the PPP loans and all that, I'm like going, don't do it. No. Don't do it. I'm telling you right now, The government is going to renege on that. I'm telling you, it's going to happen. Yeah. You're going to have so many things in place in order to make sure that that's forgivable, that it ain't happening. Yeah. So don't put yourself in that position, because in most people, I don't want to say most people, I think a lot of people are actually more set up to weather a little bit of a storm than they realize. Mm-hmm. Now, there's some that are just, they're poor business management, and there's nothing you can do for that. It's, they probably shouldn't be in business. But I think there's a lot of people that have set themselves up to where, hey, yeah, it's going to suck for a while, but I think we can survive and get through this and move on to the next stage, make our adjustments, because business changes every 10 years. Mm-hmm. I mean, really?
Well, in our industry, it changes so fast.
Yeah.
Yeah, so fast.
So you're constantly looking forward to, making an adjustment. I mean, and we can go into the discussion of, there's all kinds of people there's still people that make 100% of their money and a full living from doing break fix residential work.
Oh yeah. Absolutely.
Still doing it.
Absolutely.
And, there's a lot of people out there that say, oh, that's impossible. No, it's not impossible. It actually is possible. Everything is possible. Mm-hmm. If you just got to find your niche. So I said it the Canadian way. Okay.
Thank you for being culturally sensitive.
And it took me a little bit, but yeah, I got there. So I think people need to be aware of how they run their business. And if it's a constant stress, if it's a constant, you get heart palpitations when a customer calls you, I think those are the times where you need to step back and make an assessment on your business. And I think most people don't take the time to do that. And then we can talk about the health connotations of, the eating habits and all the different things that I can tell you right now, as a 50-year-old man, I can tell you that I came home at 3:00 last night. Because it was here, not because I necessarily wanted it, but because it was here, I ate a bowl of ice cream with hot fudge. And I'm going to tell you, I feel like absolute crap today.
But how did it taste?
It tasted awesome for the 3 minutes that I ate it. But I suffer for the rest of the next day until I kind of purge that stuff out of my system. And that's kind of what we do, right? Mm-hmm. We go for these small amounts of short pleasure, but we don't necessarily look at on the other side. Oh, I'm just going to take 30 minutes talking to this customer. Mm. And we sit there and we go, because I'm building customer relations. Just as an example, okay, you just spent 30 minutes with a customer. That's 30 minutes you could have spent with your kid. Mm-hmm. That's 30 minutes you could have spent with your wife. Mm-hmm. So at the end of the day, what's more important? And I'm telling you, from a standpoint, from a customer is going to want a healthy business to take care of their business.
Right.
And if you're not a healthy business in more ways than one, mm-hmm. it's going to come out eventually, and you're going to lose that customer anyhow.
Right. So
take care of yourself first. What is the old thing where you're in a plane, put your mask on first?
Right.
Because you can't help anybody else put their mask on if you're suffocating.
Exactly.
So Corey, I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of different things that people need to think about in their business. Is there anything that comes to mind that we basically haven't talked about today that you would encourage people to think about, to move forward in their business and their thought process when it comes to, dealing with whatever it is, health issues, mental illness, those types of things in their business?
I mean, I would say, just be open to the possibility, keep an eye on it, recognize that the signs can be more subtle than you realize. If you want to learn a little bit more about it, you can take a look at my blog. So instanthousecall.com/blog, and there's going to be a couple of articles there that talk about my experience with depression. And there is another website, I believe it's Wings of Madness. If you give me a second, I will tell you. But that's actually a really good blog on depression. Wingofmadness.com. is a good blog about depression. I'd say keep an eye on it. The biggest thing is if you think you might have it, talk to your doctor, and more importantly, talk to a psychiatrist. And don't be off-put by the idea of talking to a psychiatrist. I know it seems weird. It felt weird for me too. But they're doctors. They're just a doctor like any other doctor. They just handle something different, right? It's like, I go just see a doctor about it. It's like any other illness, and it's not like hocus pocus. They're not going to give you a lobotomy for talking to them. See a doctor and get it taken care of, and it makes a huge difference.
That's good. And I think people out there should, when you think about things, and if you're not sure I guess the point is, if you're asking yourself the question, am I depressed? You probably should at least get some sort of consultation and at least talk to somebody to figure out if what you have is actual depression or, something that they need to do, and just, take everything with a grain of salt. Yeah, it sucks. Talking to people. I pretty much don't care anymore because I'm too old to give a crap, but I just tell them the way it is. And if they like it, they like it. If they don't, they don't. I don't, so me talking to somebody, I will often laugh, and this is not to make light of this, but I find it enjoyable with my, let me tell you something about myself. First of all, I was talking to my wife earlier, and I said, when I was younger, I said, the reason I'm so loud and boisterous is because I'm insecure. I have to cover the insecurity up with something, and that's the natural reaction. That's something we do. But when we look at, things like depression and stuff like that, it's one of those things where you don't want to mess around with, things that may or may not happen. And it's, I think when you deal with people, I know where I was going with that. When I told my wife, I said, yeah, if I was to go see a psychiatrist, I said, they'd be the one ended up on the couch after talking to me. But, that's just because I'm out there a little bit. And I think a lot of times, the way our minds work, that puts us in a position to, again, we don't want to show weakness, but what showing weakness is? Doing nothing to help yourself. That's the actual showing of weakness. Actually stepping up and doing something to take care of yourself, that's showing strength. And I think it takes a lot of strength and a lot of effort to go through and be able to, come to a conclusion, talk to people, get that out there, and get whatever help it is you need in order to, help you move on in your life. Because at the end of the day, Corey, that's the goal, right?
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Well, I think this topic could go on and on and on and on. I'm sure we could talk for hours, and you're definitely always welcome back if you want to share anything about, any new insights or anything like that. But if people wanted to find out more about you, or, even chat with you, I know you mentioned a blog post, and we'll have all those links in the show notes. Where could they do that?
They can email me at Corey, Corey, at instanthousecall.com. Or the website is instanthousecall.com.
All right. And check out their awesome remote service over there for, I know Corey won't say it, so I'll say it for him. Instanthousecall.com. I use it almost on a daily basis. So it helps me remote in and take care of customers' computers, and check it out. And then obviously he's got, he's one of those people that actually, puts a blog on their website like we're all supposed to. And that's good. So the more information out there, the better. I'm glad for people like that. All right. You guys can come join us every Friday at noon Eastern Standard Time. You can watch live and hang out in the chat room over at youtube.com/MSP Unplugged. Subscribe and hit that notification button so you never miss an episode. I guess that's what the kids are doing nowadays. I don't know. I was just told to put that in there. Or you can use your favorite podcasting app for old people like me to take us with you wherever you go. And it's kind of nice. You can be going to a client in a car and listening, because it just automatically downloads automatically to your phone, and you can just listen on the fly. I want to thank everyone for listening, and we'll see you next time on MSP Unplugged.